There are a few things that get me more excited than growing my own seed and getting the tomatoes just to start growing. That tells me spring isn't very far off. Today, though, I'm going to discuss that there are other people that have it a lot harder than I do, and those are homeless people. The first homeless person I ever saw in McCook, Nebraska, I just started my candy truck, and at the park each day, at the end of the day, a gentleman would pull in with a pickup and had a topper on it. And he finally came over one day and he said, "Sir," he said, "what do you do with the extra ice at the end of the day?" And I said, "Well, it's pretty mushy. It ain't very good for anything. I used to just throw it out." He said, "Do you mind if I could have that?" And I said, "Sure, bring your bucket over. Take all you want." And so that's what he did. And he opened up the back of his topper, and half the topper was just packed from top to bottom, just crammed there so tight you couldn't put a thimble in there. It was so tightly packed. On the other side, there was a sleeping bag. And I thought, boy, he must go fishing a lot. And so he did that a number of days, getting ice from me, and he'd put it in his cooler. And so one day I just said, "Boy, you fish every day, don't you?" And he said, "Not hardly." He said that he'd lived through a very ugly divorce. And he said his wife got everything, the house and everything of importance, except for his pickup and his topper. And he said that she also got a large child support. And he said, "My job doesn't allow me to, after I pay child support, I don't have enough money left over to, rent a home for myself or apartment." And I thought, boy, that's a bad deal. And he said, "Well, I'm making the best of it, and I want to stay in the area because he had his child here, and but it was very hard for him." He did that for about 5 months, and it was starting to get winter, get cold, and he finally came one day to me and he said, "Goodbye." He said, "I'm leaving." And I said, "That's too bad." I said, "Where are you headed?" And he said, "Mexico." And I said, "That's quite a ways away." And he said, he's got to get away from the child support. He said, "It's just beating him to death." And he said, "I'm tired of it," and he said, I'm heading for Mexico. And he said, "I'm going to get a job down there," and he said, "They won't be able to get me for the child support," and he said, "I'll try to start a new life." Now, I wished him well, but I understood the total frustration of living in the back of a topper, for 5 months and with no hope of doing any better. And especially in a small town, there isn't a lot of extra work and jobs. With that in mind, through the years, I've seen others that have been homeless. Most of them, I admit, were young people kicked out of their own homes by their parents. The kids got on the dark side, be it of drugs or some other criminal activity, or just simply couldn't get along with their parents anymore. And so they were on to the street. Most of the time, they'd find a buddy or a friend that would let them stay with them. But a number of them would get together, and we've had a number of up in the trailer court, maybe as many as 10 kids would rent a trailer at the same time. True, they kept it under the table because legally they couldn't do it, but they did it and still do it today around. Be that as it may, though, there's a lot of people that simply are homeless. And part of that problem I always push to the young men when they start looking at the babes. I tell them that 5 minutes of pleasure might cost you 18 years of child support. And that's slavery that's awful hard to dig out just to break even at the beginning of each month and try to get ahead. It's virtually impossible. A number of young men through their 20s and into the 30s, they ended up living with their parents all that time just so that they could afford to pay child support. So I push that big time to think hard before you play that game. But there are a few others in the homeless category, and those are the ones that are trying to save money. And a number of them live in their cars, mostly vans that I've seen, and they will park at the lake for a few days in different lakes, and they'll park at we've got a car park here where they can park for free for I think it's a week period or 2-week period, and they move around and they park in the alley of their friends or things like that. And that's how they live, and a number of them talked about saving $1,500 in a summer. And there's very little chance of most young people saving any money at all when they're paying a lot of rent, utilities, stuff like that. And so I've seen a number of people do that. Oh, it's a hard life. They get a good education. I kid you not. But with that in mind, that is one option that I have seen in the homeless category. But it is amazing in the land of milk and honey that so many, and I believe a lot more, are going to be homeless. This is McCook's Mr. Bill. I hope you subscribe to my future films and consider some of the wisdom I've talked about. Thank you.